U.S. Green Building Council, a dear friend of mine, asked if he could review it because he couldn't come tonight. Jonathan Burgess, you know him, Anne-Marie, up from your way, and a friend of Cheryl's too, and he couldn't make it, but he really wants to help us down the road. So yes, please.
Okay, and then Monica and Scott, I'm giving you guys co-hosting abilities so you can do whatever you need to do on the software side.
Okay. Maybe I should go ahead and kick it off. Our agenda, and I'll let Monica kind of moderate here. We were going to start with a little kickoff from you and me and Ethan if he was here. But why don't I let you begin, since you were so nice to pull this together, and it is a collaborative, and tell us from your point of view who you are and what's going on, Ryan.
Oh, for me?
Yep.
Okay, and then also Ethan did text me and that he can jump on. He's just having dinner with the kids, so he'll probably jump on in a minute or two, I think, to do his part.
Cool.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Ryan. I'm from PlacemakingUS. We are working to connect all the placemakers across the United States and with the international networks of placemakers out there, share best practices, collaborate together. And we were really what's valuable is when placemakers get together at events like placemaking weeks, and we were planning a lot of those for this year, and then the virus hit, and so we quickly got online and started having discussions. And in our first discussion, Scott really brought up this Wuhan placemaking declaration that he's very interested in, that the entire global placemaking movement is very interested in. It sort of happened, and now it's really up to people to take it to the next steps. And Scott thought you guys might want to be that group to help take this Wuhan placemaking declaration to the next steps by taking it from more of a government-led and think tank-led document to a more community-led, grassroots-led document, and then that your experience will help inform many other people on processes like this to go ahead and get a local placemaking declaration created. And in some of our online discussions, we met Monica at the Pontiac incubator and Jim, who I see hovering around back there, and they had a tool that maybe could help you guys think through this process, and they put some time into setting this up to see if this is a good way to go about doing this. And I think that's a pretty good summary. We have a Facebook group, PlacemakingUS, where we do a lot of talking and dialoguing. And the one thing I think I failed to mention is that Scott is doing this as part of a Placemake Earth Challenge that we're doing with Europe. So basically the week of April 18th to the 27th, a lot of cities and groups like you guys around the world are taking actions to show the connection between placemaking and climate resiliency. So that was sort of the other impetus behind this that we're really excited about, because what you're doing here doesn't just have impact in your city, it's going to have a global impact and global visibility amongst these networks. So we're really excited about what you guys are putting energy into this. And thanks to Scott and Monica for their resources and time.
Wow, thanks, Ryan. That really does say a lot. And the folks that I invited know me. They come from a variety of different walks and interests. And they know that health is a big interest of mine. Certainly in the last week, we've seen so much talk about health equity and the impacts of COVID-19 on marginalized communities. Yesterday, the talk about kids not being able to wash their hands and these things. And we heard from Europe that they're about to publish a manifesto across 15 languages in 15 countries, a post-COVID-19. In fact, I want to show you guys, I'm going to just give me 1 sec. I'm going to go to screen share. We'll see if it works.
And then Scott, also Ethan just jumped on as well, so he can do his part when you're ready.
Great. Let me see if I can just pull up this slide real quick. So yesterday we talked, one moment. Let's see, all I got to do is slide there. Okay, so we talked about the convergence of issues around place yesterday, and I just wanted to show this for a minute to wind things up as to how our different disciplines of community are intertwined. And we know this very much in public health as well. 80% of your health outcomes are not based on clinical outcomes, but the impacts of your environment, where you live, work, and play, et cetera. So here was what Europe said. This was fascinating, and I think just trying to set the stage a little bit for why this Wuhan declaration. What are the long-term consequences of COVID, and will we go back to business as usual? What will our public spaces look like after? And we're starting to see a little bit of that happening actually now in Wuhan. So these were some of our conversations yesterday, and I thought they really played into what we're trying to do. And here was a report from New Zealand and the Maori culture, and the placemaking declaration or proclamation, I guess their ethos and all is listed here. And I just love some of the language here. I'll collaborate like mad. It's joyful, and I think I wanted to show you guys that we're not shooting in the dark here. Others around the world are thinking strong, hard, and deep about these topics. That's for the end. I'm going to exit now and give I would like the opportunity now to take 3 minutes of your time. This short, exactly 2 minute and 59 second video, I had to self-produce with my phone and my best thinking as a project for the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. But when I looked at it earlier today, I thought it was really relevant to what we're trying to do here. After that, I'm going to turn it over to Ethan, but just give me 1 second to cue this up.
Hi, I'm Scott Strawbridge. I'm a placemaker and a health equity advocate. For over a decade, I helped plan, build, operate, and activate Northwest Gardens, the first LEED certified affordable housing neighborhood in the world. I became passionate about health equity while serving as a co-leader of a multi-year CDC Healthy Community Zone project. We're helping our neighbors find new ways to reduce the remarkable disparities in life outcomes that occur here and across our country. Our downtown, like many in the US, is undergoing a dynamic transformation, yet life looks remarkably different in our nearby historically segregated neighborhoods. Across the span of just 1 mile, unemployment rates triple and life expectancies decline by over 10 years. Health and social outcomes lag far behind our nearby neighbors. The professional community agrees that housing comes first, but what comes next? The health and social disparity issues we face are global in scale, yet solutions are often found at a local level. We need to turn the flow of governance and social services from top down to bottom up. I worked with the Northwest Gardens community to develop a network of 22 community health workers and a simple data-informed framework we call the She Lens. In all matters of change in our public realm, we ask the professionals and policymakers 3 simple questions. Is it sustainable? Is it healthy? Is it equitable? We're collaboratively weaving government and community goals together to create practical strategies for a better future. One early effort brought community-led change to local transit routes. Then, our city planners invited us to contribute ideas for new policies. Now, a number of new health and equity policies have been enacted. Our advocacy is working, but we can't rest. Lives are at stake. I think it's important to share our process and our success stories with others. Recently, I began serving as a co-lead of the PlacemakingUS network. We're part of a global network of leaders who together accelerate placemaking as a way to create healthy, inclusive, and beloved communities. On this platform, I'm able to share our She Lens process and our success stories with placemakers around the US and the world. Placemakers can address social determinants of health on a massive scale, using lighter, quicker, cheaper means towards sustainable, healthy, equitable outcomes. We can't solve our problems through technical expertise alone. We need to enlist the participation and experience of all humans. When we begin with an inclusive and equitable process, equitable outcomes are far more likely. I'm convinced that placemaking in the SHE lens can help us get there together. Please help me spread the word.
Okay. Let me unshare, stop share. Thank you all, welcome. I hope that tells you a little bit about why I'm here, but there are many other good reasons to be a placemaker than health equity. Let me introduce Ethan Kent from PlacemakingX, and he can tell you a little bit more about what that last piece I was talking about. Hi, Ethan.
Hey, Scott. Yeah, thanks. Wow. Thanks for sharing all that. It's really helpful and beautiful. That videos makes such a great case. We need that. It's something, if there's a version of it we can share publicly, let us know it, when that makes sense.
I'll send it later tonight. I'd be happy to share it. Okay.
So we should create it actually would be perfect for, actually we had a call recently with, you guys know, what's her from Athens? What's her, Ryan, what's the woman's name from Belarus in Athens, Ohio?
Where's Ryan?
Sorry, I clicked Ethan's mute instead of mine.
Whatever.
Nadia.
Yeah, so she's trying to get people to create movies of their placemaking projects. And so it's something like, that would be a good example. If we get lots of people to create little videos like that and create profiles of people and they're telling their stories of why they do placemaking, what they're trying to do, what they're passionate about, that'd be a great example. But I think the declaration in a way is a way to do this for communities, for cities and for regions. And the meeting we all had yesterday, and some of us that we had for those who weren't on it was a meeting of the leaders of the regional networks, and we had we invited something like 90 people and 76 people joined, I think, right? Is that right, Ryan? It would be great to get each of those regional networks to do declarations. So theoretically we have one from China, which their network isn't going so well right now, but they have a declaration. And then then that I worked on for over a few years, that one for New Zealand, which is I think a great model. And they'd love to help other people do that as well. And they're having they have monthly convenings, and they're on Zoom now too. And I'm sure they would invite people to join one of them too. And they're looking to have a placemaking week in October that I'm hoping to go to if traveling's still happening. But yeah, I mean, I could just answer any questions or something, to sort of start you guys off. This is, I mean, the way it sounds like you guys are taking this in lots of great new directions. So I don't want to slow anything down. I just want to encourage it and figure out how to make it plug into other people in the network. And I mean, I do think it'd be really helpful to have a set of tools, examples, sort of a process for people to do a declaration themselves. And obviously going through one, and sort of mapping it out, would be really useful. And then learning from that and creating tools from that to support.
Ethan, you helped write the original Wuhan declaration. Could you tell them about that process and what it was releasing that as well?
Yeah. So that wasn't the most participatory process. That was. We worked with the organizing committee in Wuhan. While we were there with people from UN Habitat and the different universities and government leaders to articulate, what their biggest concerns and what the biggest issues and opportunities were for public spaces in Wuhan, what they were proud of. And that turned into, Catherine Pinehart and I drafted a statement that they all edited a little bit and approved. So it was more top down in how it was drafted, certainly. but yeah, again, I think it's inspiring that it's the first sort of statement of placemaking that we've gotten from a big government and from and from the UN Habitat. It's a good definition of placemaking, and then of course the story that it came from Wuhan and from China, where you wouldn't expect it, is can be used as an inspiring story for other communities. And I have been reaching out actually to Wuhan even a couple times, and this week someone asked me to draft some questions that they would send to senior people there. So hopefully we'll get some answers about how public spaces are there, how the declaration is being used, or how it could be used for benefit. I also asked how the broader placemaking community could support Wuhan, and and then how, of course, what is it that we need to learn from Wuhan's resilience and recovery now. They've just opened up. They've stopped the like yesterday or the day before they ended their quarantine restrictions. So that's a good process. And then the New Zealand one, is a little more recent too. So that that's a much more participatory, much more grassroots. And really, it was led by a Maori woman that sort of facilitated the meetings and actually, it was done in an extraordinarily participatory sort of workshop style, different teams coming together, workshopping the language. And, after like a 2.5 day sort of retreat, it was very, everyone, learning all about Maori culture and sitting on the ground and being very spiritual about the whole process and everything. So those are the two very different models that came out of two very different communities, but both equally powerful and beautiful, I think. So we do have to realize that these processes have to come with whatever strengths exist in a community, and they'll be inspiring because of those strengths and assets. So as we design a process and tools, we have to allow it to start with, to think, help communities start with wherever they're at, and imagine these different end users, or these users, whether they're community activists or city government leaders or developers, or that is, I think, the beauty and the challenge for the placemaking movement is it's very diverse. It's all demographics, ages, disciplines, cultures, and we often start with one group of those, and we always challenge them to say who's not invited, who else needs to be included in it. So it should be the same for a declaration. How do we make sure it's not culturally, demographically defined too narrowly in any case? So the process, again, is key for inviting new people in to help shape that declaration. That said, we obviously celebrate wherever it's coming from and the identities of the people that are helping to lead it.
So hopefully we create something that suits our community context, all of the local participants, and certainly that's the Maori outcome, the grassroots outcome, and we honor the differences. And I think I heard your reports back from Wuhan that they honor the differences too. There's no way to design a community toolkit where you hire consultants, fly them to another country, and have them write something in collaboration with the government. It's a good thing. It's a great thing that it was done, but it's not. It's a great thing to compare and contrast to, and most especially, the origins are amazing.
Yeah.
That you got to a communist country that doesn't normally hold a whole lot of openness for these types of things, and the declaration is very broad and inclusive and talks about equity and inclusion in many, many ways. So I was super impressed with the context of its creation, no matter how it got brewed. It's an incredible outpouring of love from that country. And I thought that if the COVID could go viral, why not this? So I'll leave. Let's move. That's my end to it. But if you want to say anything else, Ethan.
Well, just one more thing. If we can create, look to creating sort of a page that could be, could be on the PlacemakingX website about placemaking declarations, and if we had Wuhan, New Zealand, and SoFlo, that's.
Yes. And now you can see the ways to iterate and move forward in your own context.
Triangulated, diverse set of contexts, and yeah, and that could then inspire others to do it as well. And we, you know, then we would really set forth a program to get different networks, different contexts to create these models and share them with us. So, I mean, with that, any other questions for me? I'm gonna have to jump off and make dinner with my kids here. But any other questions or any ways I can help with this? And yes, I mean, include me, however you need me going forward. This is important. I think this will be a really important program for the year. And it's an important piece of content, again, for people to focus on when we can't do as much in-person, you know, actions and you know, we can't work in public spaces as much. I think this is a great product for many different communities to focus on that are looking for a way to sort of focus their organizing and their visioning. And then of course, public spaces will change, and whether we like it or not, very drastically out of this. We need intention. A declaration is a great way to create intention to really, you know, as we come out of this, to shape our public spaces very differently, to reclaim street space, to totally change our patterns, to slow down our communities, to travel less. You know, but we need a process to develop that shared intention to direct, you know, drastically, radically redirect the ways we participate in our communities. And again, so I think this could be totally transformative for so many contexts. And it really, and people are looking for a way to organize and structure their visioning process, and this really could be it. So I'll leave you there, but feel free to
Thanks, Ethan.
Thanks, Ethan. Thank you.
text me, you know, call me for anything. Like my connection's kind of weak right now too. So
Okay. Monica, I think it's time for you to take it away.
Okay. Well, I'll just jump right in, and that was a wonderful overview about the different challenges that different contexts produce. And one thing about this process is that it can adapt itself to a hyperlocal situation, to a classroom, to whatever kind of project comes up. It typically would be a lot less loaded, but we just, you know, we're giving an overview of the page. So first things first is this, we're just going to go over some of the tools and the different buckets that we have here for anyone that is unfamiliar yet.
Hey, Monica, sorry to interrupt, but just for a second, could we go to the attendees as one of the first things so we can say hi to our other friends?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to circle around and then give it over because that's the most important part. But here we have our attendees. You want to go ahead and pick it up, and we could do introductions now.
I think that'd be nice if you wouldn't mind. Hey, Corinna, are you there?
Yes, of course.
Log on and say hi. We just, you know, we want to take a minute for self-introductions, and so please.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, yes, I at least used to offer walking tours of Little Havana until the tourism industry went, just completely stopped. But I've actually been involved in equitable placemaking for quite some time. I started sort of in the online world in the early 90s with this idea of the digital divide and concerned about the lack of content by communities of color on the internet, not just getting access to the internet. And then when I moved to Washington, D.C. in the late 1980s, I sort of transitioned into the material world offline. And I got involved as a consultant around public participation in neighborhood and city and transportation projects. And then I moved to Miami, and I was involved in the DC Comprehensive Plan, moved to Miami, got involved in Little Havana. I led a civic engagement initiative called Imagine Miami, and we actually brought Project for Public Spaces to do one of these part of a series of change maker conferences. And so one of those conferences was specifically on placemaking, and this was for like grassroots community leaders. And but more recently, I got my PhD in global and sociocultural studies, and I did my dissertation on the racial politics behind the development of Little Havana's heritage district. And I am very focused right now on white supremacy and its role in and the relationship between race and space. So I use my tours right now, my walking tours, to actually build awareness about the way that, historically at least, the construction of plazas and monumental spaces can have some very strong racial narratives embedded in them and things like that. So that's my passion.
Wow.
I hope I didn't go too long.
That was great.
More time.
Memory says she'll be right back. That's cool. Jim Karras, if you're still here, I know you might have a time constraint. Are you there? Jim,
yeah, I'm here. I just had to unmute myself. Thank you, Scott. And it's pleased to be here, and thank you for inviting me. So far, it's been very interesting. Just a very quick summary. I'm a consultant. I'm based in Fort Lauderdale, and I focus on community and economic development, particularly development finance. Do a lot of work in the affordable housing arena. A number of clients, both public agencies, quasi-public agencies, nonprofit organizations, and private developers and financial institutions. I've been consulting for about 35 years now, originally from Boston. And during my career as a consultant, I have also been an educator. And currently, for the last 7 years, I have been teaching at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government and Graduate School of Design. And I teach courses on urban policy, as well as financing community economic development. My urban policy course, given the kind of broad generic name of the course, and there are so many different ways to approach a 13-week semester in terms of what is it that we want to talk about relative to urban and policy, I decided to use the prism of addressing issues around poverty and racial discrimination and racial inequities. And I'll just close with the 750 comprehensive 7-county 50-year plan. I wrote the Fair Housing and Equity Assessment for South Florida, and I also did that for Central Florida and the greater Orlando area, looking at racial concentrations of poverty and a number of different indicators, many of them that Scott and others have discussed, particularly around health and educational attainment and transportation. So I continue to focus on issues around low opportunity communities and addressing historic inequities. I specifically get into a lot of development finance stuff, if you will, and that's program design and working with both program design, CDFIs, and trying to get projects underwritten and dip into the toolbox to get all the sources of capital and make things happen.
Thank you, Jim.
Yes, opportunity zones, very much so. I just add that we're working on a research project at Harvard, which I'm leading, and we have uncovered 30 transactions of affordable housing that have been have a source of equity from opportunity funds. So we'll be releasing our first case studies over the summer, and I'll be writing a paper, and hopefully that'll be done by the fall, on opportunity zones and affordable housing.
That should be interesting.
Yeah, I don't make me go down the rabbit hole, but what's interesting is that many of us didn't think that it would work with low-income housing tax credits. We've uncovered about a dozen deals with LIHTC and opportunity zone funds, and trying to figure out how everybody did it, the innovation, and we're very excited of the fact that it's happening.
Wow, thanks, Jim.
Awesome.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Cheryl Mariente is dropped in. I'm so glad to see you, Cheryl. Thank you for coming. Would you introduce yourself for a minute?
Sure. Yeah, sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I am like in the middle of actually picking up dinner for the family. So, and I was working really late, so I'm in transit, but I have a few minutes. In general, yeah, I don't want to get in too deep into my history, but in general terms, I started doing something called urban acupuncture back in 2001. That's when I was first like introduced to this idea, which is a kind of placemaking style of working. I was trained by architect Marco Casagrande from Finland, and I still work very closely with him on these theories and have expanded on them over the years. And so, you know, come originally from Puerto Rico, moved to the US, and I taught creative placemaking for a while at FAU. And afterwards, I actually then went in and started practicing what I was teaching by working with street plants. So after doing some tactical urbanism and things like that, one of my biggest clients was downtown West Palm Beach and the city of West Palm Beach, where I live. And I just have been working with them for the past 3 years now. And just basically, I am their manager of urban placemaking officially. So once COVID hit, obviously all my projects are about activating public spaces and vacant lots and anything that's empty. I'm supposed to do something to bring the community together in the place. So right now we're scrambling and been turning all my programs virtual to continue the, you know, the big fight that I'm having right now is that I hate the word social distancing. I think it's the incorrect language. We're physically distant from each other, but we can be socially connected during this time. And I think it should be a time to strengthen bond communities. And my relationship, obviously to Scott, is we did work on a project together at Sistrunk. And that's a good example of urban acupuncture, where we usually take a very small project and it has to come from the people that live there. So we basically are facilitators to identify in their storytelling what is important to them. And we take that piece and make them the actors of it and give it back to them, teach them how to use it, and then they own it. So we worked on Sistrunk, Share Sistrunk as the method, and then created the megaphone, which was a shipping container that turns into a stage and now is a community hub. So once we were out, we basically gifted to the housing authority and to the people of the community to keep it and use it and make it theirs. A lot of projects, some fail, some make it. But to me, that's the piece I like working with placemaking, is the connection to the humans, making sure I can listen to them and then translate those words to government. I can read code. I have a master's in urban planning and a bachelor's in architecture. So I read code and I try to also rewrite code for cities in some of my projects. So some of the things here now that were crucial that are halted and I don't know what's going to happen is we're doing like short-term development code where we want to be able to really make pop-ups longer than a week or a month, but not get them scrutinized through the building department processes. And so who knows where that goes now because of everything that's happening. There might be a demand or it might just kill it. So yeah, that's the real big overview in a nutshell, and try to be as fast as I can.
Thank you.
So cool.
Thank you guys.
Awesome.
Who's next?
Oh, hey guys, sorry, I got kicked off for a minute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That was terrifying. everything lost my internet connection. I usually have 100 megs here. So is Marcus Richards on the line by any chance?
Yes, I'm here.
He is. Okay. So Marcus and I haven't had a face-to-face chance to meet, but he works for the Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization. I have an unstable connection. I'm going to switch over to my phone and log back in. Why don't you say hi, Marcus, if you can hear me?
Okay.
And tell the folks a little bit about who you are and what your work involves over at the NPO. And I'm gonna have it on my phone here just so I don't lose you guys again. I'll be right back.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Marcus. Hey, my name is Marcus Richards. I just started with Broward County, the Broward County NPO. I'm currently a Florida State student. I'm getting my master's in urban and regional development planning. And but right now, I'm a city planner for the city of Fort Lauderdale. Right now, we're working on a master plan for the city to incorporate some of the new downtown development, transportation projects that are coming. And when I seen this opportunity for placemaking, for me being new to the area, I just wanted to. I feel like this will be very helpful with me learning how to engage the community with such a diverse area. And I was just, I just felt like it would be good to kind of just look at it from a different aspect. I feel like so far all I really know is transportation. So I would definitely want to expand in this part of planning.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marcus. I'm not sure if Scott is back on yet, so maybe does Nikki or Ann want to go next? Or maybe Nikki.
Sure, I can go. My name is Nikki Lopez. Kind of the umbrella of how I explain myself is as a creative advocate. So my practice is everything using creativity as a tool for communication, for community programming. I teach art to children with disabilities, as well as go into the juvenile detention centers and do art programming with them. I have a project called What's Your Elephant? So it uses the arts to talk about anything unspoken. And I do that by way of exhibitions, artist talks, workshops. I do a lot of community engagement projects, social practitioner, do a lot of different things within the community. And I work with a lot of different grassroots organization, nonprofit, independent people. And I worked with Scott for a number of years on a variety of projects, one of them being with the Northwest Gardens community, which is the Housing Authority's affordable housing. I manage their social media. I do a monthly newsletter, helping to get the word out and to empower the community with different resources. Like with the COVID, the pandemic that's going on, putting resources on their website, email blasts out to the community. And we're doing a project now where I'm going to be working with artists, selecting art, and doing some community engagement, which now is going to, some of it's going to shift to be virtual, to select pieces of art that's going to go into the housing for the seniors that's being built up now. But something where it's not just only art, but it's like art with a purpose, which is something I'm really big on. So it's like this particular project is going to be like honoring Indigenous spaces and, the rich diaspora history. But, how do we, come together as a community and paint, a picture where we're more connected. So we're going to be selecting art pieces to go in that home. And so I do a lot of different things. And I do a weekly Facebook interview where I'm talking to artists, activists, social entrepreneurs. So just sharing the work of the community locally and as well as nationally.
Wow, Nikki, that's so cool. I wasn't sure if you heard of this. I just posted in the chat this artistrelief.org, but an arts institution around in our area shared it, and it's up to $5,000 grants to artists facing financial emergencies during COVID. So,
oh, thank you. Yeah, I think I may have seen that one, but I've been getting some resources and sharing it, and as well as, you know, just seeing which one I could apply for, but also seeing which one people that I know could possibly use. But I appreciate that. Thank you.
cool. Scott looks like he's kind of back. Scott, hey, Scott, are you back? Are you functioning?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, great.
It took me a minute, but thanks for keeping things rolling. Have we missed anybody? Anne Marie, did she come back?
I don't see her in her frame, but and then Bree Stevens is also on the call. I don't think we heard from her.
Oh yeah, yeah. Hi, Bree.
Hello, all. Hi. Can everyone see me? How are y'all doing? Oh my goodness. Well, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Bree. I snuck in here kind of late. I apologize. I'm still getting used to this whole different time zone thing when I'm traveling, so I'm trying to make the best of it. I am an activist and I'm a community organizer. I've just started on this journey. I'm 24 years old. I'm a graduate of Austin Peay State University. And while I was there in Clarksville, I was able to do a lot of activism work, a lot of around the spaces of brown folks, women, LGBT plus community work when it comes to health, education, disparity, and economic opportunity. And I recently have moved to Chattanooga, where I've started working in that space with entrepreneurs and equity, and what that looks like in places and spaces around town, what that looks like for creatives, and what that looks like for millennials who are trying to start their career. And I worked with CoLab, which is a nonprofit based in Chattanooga, downtown Chattanooga. And from there, spun the relationship between all of this. Placemaking is where I sat on the local host committee, and I was able to implement things within the host committee that helped bring forth change for not only the placemaking conference, which is really fun, but also the work that comes after, which you all know is the most important. So what that looks like for us to continue this work on a more substantial basis, and how can we make it more impactful?
Thanks, Bree. And Monica and Jim, please, we didn't give you the time to have a proper introduction either. So let me toggle, let's pick you guys back up.
Okay. Do you want to? Well, I'm Monica Williams, and I'm the co-director of Pontiac Holonomy Incubator. And we have worked on, we sort of put our energy on the Phoenix Center about 6 years ago, and decided to jump into an effort to save it from demolition. And tied innovation districts and placemaking to the value creation possibilities. If you were to tear it down, it would be a huge hole in our downtown, like the Silverdome, Scott. And yeah. If you were to build it up and reinvent it into what it was originally intended for, which was a community magnet to bring our community back to its downtown, and then considering new developments in the world around innovation districts and the movement back to away from research parks and back to the city and close connections and like what Chattanooga is doing. and then tie that in with placemaking and the community grassroots, bottom-up, community-oriented development. We have the state that occupies, with Department of Health and Human Services, half of one of the towers that's connected to the Phoenix Center, and we've got our transportation center next to it. And so we've kind of developed our platform around that. And then Jim has a long history with education and K through 12 development that he can speak to, and design with the auto industry. And so that's the core of what we do is our process. And we've just, you know, tied it to that, and then followed these bodies of work. Placemaking is our favorite, of course, because it's the most human-centered orchestration out there that's value-driven. And that's me.
Jim Ross, I got 30 years in placemaking in Oakland County. I'm a native son of Pontiac, Michigan. About 5 decades ago, the town governance decided that a lot of demolition would solve a lot of urban propositions and solve a lot of urban problems. And of course, they followed the metaphor, unfortunately. More recently, they thought they would pick that up again, and we were able to intercede. What I'm really interested in is all of the histories that I've heard and the advantages that that represents to a collective body. That's very exciting. The people that are on this call are outstandingly credentialed and have the capacity to do great things. And I'd much rather get to the things that we can do than the things that we've done. So I'm gonna let my time go by the side, and we'll talk about that later. Monica,
well, Jim and Monica and Bree as well, we do want to stop. I don't want to forget to thank you, so I'm going to say it in the middle. I'll try to remember to say it again at the end, but you've been so forthcoming and generous with your time, and I'm excited about the next step we're going to take here. I think we're going to begin to get some of the work going. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Anne-Marie did not come back at this point. Who is that?
Hey, singing. We love it.
Okay, and if I missed anybody, I don't see Anne-Marie's face. If I missed anyone who didn't self-introduce, speak now, or let's go on and we'll get going. And I'm sure she'll jump back in when she can. Actually, let me say this. Anne-Marie is a public relations specialist who works with community development organizations, community redevelopment agencies, business improvement districts, and public and not-for-profit clients up and down the coast. She's based in West Palm. I know Cheryl has bumped into her from time to time. She's very active up there, but she's also very active in the Overtown CRA work. She's been down there for years, and with us in Sistrunk. And so she has her finger on the pulse of South Florida in a very unique way, and runs a stellar creative agency. So that was another little twist. And when she comes back, we'll try to give her a minute to throw some of that on herself too. But thank you guys. Take it away, Monica.
Okay. Well, you can see I was doing some sticky notes while everyone was talking. And that's something that once we're doing a charrette, a digital charrette, or analog, something that you'd want everybody doing simultaneously. And the thing that we have with this board is that everyone can be on that same page at the same time. And so it's real simple. You just right click on a white space here. You can add a sticky note from there. You can add a title. You can import files from your computer, from the cloud.
Can I ask, how do you delete a post-it? Because I created one and I wanted to delete it and I didn't know how to do so.
Oh, you can just click on it, and when it has this blue frame here,
Yep.
it allows you to backspace. Oh, sometimes you have to click on the white space next to it and then click on it again, and then it'll let you delete it.
Okay, got it. Okay, thanks.
Uh-huh. And you can, this column here also gives a number of creative icons that you can use, shapes, other text boxes that you can format a little more easily. And then here's a draw function. And so there you can, and then also with the web, you can drag and drop. Let's see, Mosaic Lab, because I needed to add that. Add Anne Marie. There's the Mosaic Lab, and I can just click on the link and then drag and drop it. And we have Anne Marie in here now. And then you just kind of click, you can click on the box and drag it down to this context piece of our attendees. And so, and the real purpose of this, a lot of us are, we'll study up and get informed about a meeting, but the real purpose of trying to document all these little pieces is so that others, when they come onto a project, or if they want to get up to speed, they can see, who was at this meeting and what, and then I'll just kind of go through the template that we use that can kind of serve as a common language for projects. We think of it that way anyways. And one of the things that's been really fascinating to us is we do a lot of work with pilot projects with schools, and every context has its own hurdles and barriers to bottom-up projects, and there's nothing more bottom-up, we think, than working with kids. And but this little piece that's in the middle here is Jordan, and this was after like 3 months of dysfunction from the school, and revisiting the program once again because it came into a bunch of hurdles, and he memorized the process. So you can click on that and watch that at some other time, or maybe if we have time, we'll go through that. But it's something about these shapes that kind of stick in kids' brains. And so here you just have a simple vision. These are the graphical organizers, we call them. They're produced by Grove, and that's something we've kind of added to the typical design thinking process, just as more systems-based thinking. And so you have your intentional piece, your vision. In this case, it was just so obvious and self-organizing, the placemaking declaration in South Florida. But if you're working, from scratch to try to come up with something, you work with everyone and a shared vision. Sometimes it produces itself. Sometimes you got to search for what our shared vision is going to be. We think of vision as kind of the fabric, and these circles as the tent poles that are kind of holding up our fabric. So here again, it was pretty simple. The different attendees were coming from different places, and you're kind of looking for a regional statement on placemaking. So we added these, and there's 2 empty circles here. If anybody has any other ideas of other things, maybe K through 12, maybe finance, as James was talking about, design charrettes that we could produce, those kind of things. And they're just the simple outlines. And, the rest of the board is kind of where we fill in all of those elements that we're going to deploy to get this thing underway. And we have supports in this section. We've just put tech supported solutions. challenges, of course, the coronavirus, and then Scott added his video here that's amazing. So you can click on that and have access to that there as well. Your bold steps that you're taking. So we just identified what the meetings that kind of led up to this, and then we have them over in a bucket on the right. And then probably starting with your values is what is it that we're committed to along the way. And then we have game plan. So that's where you're kind of more sifting and winnowing the stages and tasks that you're going to take along the way. Placemaking Earth Challenge, of course, is obvious. And then we put in Parking Day coming up, your team and resources. The target, of course, is, and then the other objectives that you're kind of wanting to hit along the way. And then success factors, just documenting and tracking wins, and then making sure we're keeping track of challenges so we're not sweeping anything under the rug. And then IDEO produces a real simple design process, and they've got extensive body of work around design thinking, which of course design's not new, but it's for some organizations, not placemaking, of course, but they're not necessarily working with these kind of values and the end user or person in mind that's going to be using either their social sector initiatives or products or services, whatever. These are just real simple kind of leadership, creative leadership outlines. Because we work, and it can be different in any situation. I'm speaking broadly here, and then in our context, design thinking is really kind of new for a lot of organizations, and it's really a liberating process to have a place where community can put input for libraries and for education. So we have design thinking for educators, design thinking for libraries, because it's the best that we have right now around that field. Users, and then users as designers, we sent that out to the group prior to, that's really our favorite. And Corinna, IDEO also produced these cards. They're really probably not the best representations, and we really appreciate your feedback, Corinna. And you know, those can be adapted for communities. They can create their own. They solved a problem in the moment, so we have them up here. But you know, everything can kind of be adapted and designed to reflect the local context. And then we're really, the comments that you left is something we agree with, and that's why we really believe in design when everybody designs, and users as designers, really as the core elements that most reflect our thinking and process, and knowing that in transition design as well, but knowing that this is still a fluid field. It's emerging and getting better, we think, along the way. And that's about it, the overview of this kind of process that we use.
Wow.
And we have hurdles as well. I just want to say I really appreciate Ethan talking about the difference between bottom up and top down, and there are all kinds of things that can get in the way of bottom up development, and so we just appreciate that, and that's it.
Thank you.
That's really enlightening. And so the process going forward is that we can each individually work together or come together in a conference to collaborate and build the balance of this story with the reasoning behind it. Am I?
Yeah, and as well addressing the users, which we're all serving, which is most important.
Good night, Jim. Jim
Hello?
had to, but thanks for coming, Jim. We'll catch up.
Thank you, Scott. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Nice to meet you.
Opportunity zones, Jim.
Good night, Jim.
Good night, Jim.
So I'm absorbing a lot here. Did I get that? Is that the sort of the process now? We build this out together. Sorry if it's a basic question here, but I just we want to build a process here. What are your recommendations for how we move forward? Maybe that's a better way to say it, Monica.
Oh, you said it great.
No, I think you nailed it, Scott. The other thing about this is when we go and do design charrettes with users, we actually start out analog because there's a certain process that analog delivers that digital doesn't. As Bill Gates used to say, if it's beyond 3 pages, print it out. And so we use these big charts and these charrettes. Kids are really good at this, adults not so much. Strange how the instructional model was just find the answer, so who needs to think? Kids, when engaged, are often surprised that they're being asked a question, and then once they realize that you're very authentic in asking, it's off to the races. We've had a great deal of success with young people in K-12 education because of that. They're still tied to curiosity and imagination and their understanding and so forth and so on. And we're working on the adult side, how to reinvent and re-engage the imagination, which I think, as I keep hearing from everyone that has come forth today, that's what we're really after, is how do we create those meaningful experiences that bring about something that as yet has perhaps unthought of or was inadvertently dismissed.
And right now we can't do the most fundamental thing that humans usually do, which is sit at a table eye to eye and discuss their future together. So it's a very unique context for us. I think it adds, it actually makes it more poignant, but I would point that out that with the process. Any other time and place, we would be telling the community, look, have a meeting, get together, look your neighbor in the eye. And we're doing that, but it's very cool. So I'm wondering, and again, maybe I'm pushing forward too quickly, but to be mindful of the amount of time we have, it seems like a lot of this is something I should put together a little structure, a cadence over the next couple of weeks, and ask folks to check in when they have new ideas that they've contributed and go back and forth with this over time. Is the idea to sit down and pull this all off at once, or to allow folks time to consider and contribute, or do you do both?
You do both, and I think you just pointed something out. The advantage in terms of productivity is incredible, because we're all going to go away from here and we're going to immediately have ideas that we wished we'd had shared. And this is a way.
Go ahead, Commander.
Well, I guess one thing that something that I think is going to be really important moving forward is I feel like we have to acknowledge to a certain, like, if we want to make places, if equity and inclusion is truly fundamental to everything that we do, then I think it has to be part of the process, not only in terms of like thinking about people coming together and that kind of an aspect sitting around a table, but I think it also requires us to ground what we're looking at historically. Because if we look at just the history of South Florida, let alone globally, we live these legacies. We live legacies of slavery, and we live legacies of colonialism up to the present day, in like the recent study on the racial wealth gap, you know, in South Florida, and your work, Scott, and Jim's work that he was talking about, and my own work. And I kind of feel like if there's any sort of way to sort of think about what just sort of some of these historical inequities, not like going in a huge research project, but I'm saying something that acknowledges history, you know, something that, because place is not a neutral, place isn't like this neutral flat space, it has history. So I just feel like we have to sort of put that out there from the get-go, not think of sort of diversity and inclusion as this sort of add-on thing that's just another sort of piece of the pie. It has to be in the fundamental framework of everything we do. I mean, I think, or we're not really changing much, you know what I mean?
I couldn't agree more, and it was really compelling to me at the last International Placemaking Week. Bree was one of our hosts in Chattanooga, and everything, and Bree will back me up on this, everything was about equity and inclusion. Placemakers don't leave home without it. And so it's really great to have you here, because you have so much depth of knowledge and expertise and can keep us standing in the right lane. I invited Tara Chadwick, a Mesoamerican friend, who's to join us tonight. She couldn't. She has children she's homeschooling and work of her own, but she wants to watch the video and join in too. And this will give us at least one Indigenous person. I had attempted just to let you all know. Wow, the cats just ran through here. That was something. They ripped my wiring right out. Look at that. They pulled the power cord right out. So anyhow.
Wait, Nikki was going to say something.
Yeah, so to kind of underline what Karina was saying, I was on, I'm just so, I love seeing all the different ways people are mobilizing virtually and coming up with ideas and sharing resources, etc. And there's this theater company that I found, I don't even know where they're from. It was one of those lists for art resources. And they've been doing a lot of dialogue. And I really love how not only was it very inclusive and centering, when everyone introduced themselves, you know, they acknowledge which pronouns that they use, so everyone's aware of that, but they also acknowledge which indigenous lands that they were on, like stolen lands. So people, because there were people from all over the nation there, and they actually knew, you know, so they said, you know, I'm from this place, which is originally, this land was taken from, and they knew all the different tribes, you know, it was a way of honoring, you know, the space that they're on before they even got into the meeting.
So yeah, and that's why I provided that little glimpse at that Maori example. And hey, we can get on a video chat with those guys. That's so easy. And I'd love to propose, again, using this as the framework, we can set up a series of chats and allow independent work and get the ball rolling and really incorporate all this expertise. The other thing that, just to be clear in terms of the process, the concept when I began to imagine this with Ryan and Ethan was that we would figure out how a small grassroots group could get this going, but also how it could be adapted in many ways. We talked about that a little at the preamble, that Wuhan is one example and the Maori example is another, and ours will be sort of based in that grassroots stuff. But then we're going to be reaching out to the world. We may do a tool test with Placemaking Europe. We can arrange that. We can talk to the folks and invite them in to counsel with us and contribute to the extent we're comfortable. That's something we can let evolve a little bit over time if the group is interested.
Let's do it.
Yes.
I just felt that we should start here with a small group because that's attainable for any community. Step one, get 4 or 5 interested people together and have a conversation.
Right.
You know, instead of that, and I made this part of the discussion earlier, instead of let's call the government and get a consultant. And there are valid reasons for all those to happen, but our job right now was also, and I do want to remind, we have Earth Week coming up. Ethan didn't mention the fact that his father was the organizer of the first Earth Day 50 years ago. And a part of the reason I'm trying to do this is because of Fred. Because placemaking and sustainability means so much to him and me. And I hoped that when we began to adapt this along with the equity inclusion, Wuhan doesn't say anything about sustainability, and the tiny little tweaks that I made to get the ball rolling were adding in the words resiliency and sustainability. It was just a start. I didn't mean to limit. I meant to take a beginning. Then I saw the Maori thing yesterday and I just went nuts because it's a far more human iteration. I think we can find our place in the midst of all that.
Yeah. Like you said.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Monica, I think if we utilize this platform back and forth through those iterations, and I don't expect to have stuff done for Earth Day or Earth Week, I expect to be announcing that this collaboration is going, and we'll be able to screen this video tonight and share. Hello to all you people out there on Earth Week. Let's say it right now. I hope you're watching because we'll go ahead and broadcast this video during the week if Ryan will share it with us.
We can also share this link. I don't know how open you want it.
Well, you know, that's a really interesting idea. And what if we had a parking place in there for the external community? I'll call it beyond South Florida. What if we had a parking place on there and folks would come in and it would still allow us to keep our local segment in there? Is that possible?
We can duplicate this mural and make one that's a public document.
That might be a good way to go, just to and actually, yeah, I don't know, group. Any thoughts on that? Corinna, Nikki, Marcus?
I would like to say something that a huge part for me when I was going through the mural itself is what it looks like to have a knowledge sharing beyond what our immediate reach is. We know that, you know, knowledge and education is all equity based. It's not equality based. So with that being said, they're going to have to, you know, during this time that everyone is transitioning just because of the pandemic, we are up against another set of circumstances when it comes to teachers understanding what this means on a long-term basis. What does this mean for parents? So we talk about K-12 education being the core of an equitable education at that for our, you know, babies of color and for people who have different circumstances. With this outbreak itself, it's already, that is the root of, you know, Monica, Jim, and I's conversation over the past, since we met. What does it look like for our children to have education, and what does that look like on a regular basis? And so now when we talk about Wi-Fi and parents understanding how to connect to all of these apps and how they connect to their children, saying, you know, whatever school they go to, whatever system they use, now the parents are having to adapt that. And so one of the charts that I do like that is on the board that Monica put up is a I don't have my computer in front of me, so I'm sorry. It's a three-tier chart, and it's over to the side of, I think it might be top right corner. And it's got 3 different columns talking about how to share information. Let me go.
The universal.
Yes. Yes. On that, it was just discussing what that looks like for knowledge sharing and what that would actually mean, what knowledge needs to be shared, and maybe how it can be shared. I absolutely love that chart, but I like that as almost a staple of moving forward with some type of like action plan for things that we concentrate on for our next steps. You know, how do we plan on helping children K-12 education in whatever city we're in? What does that look like as a mobilized unit of everybody doing this one thing, whether that be helping kids gain access to Wi-Fi. We discussed that, Monica and I, and then talking about, and Jim brought up a wonderful point about, you know, what are parents going to do now? Because parents are going to have to take the steer. They're driving the boat now. So what does that actually look like?
Bring up a great point, Bree, in that the pandemic is actually driving a situation that was sitting very soft. And now that people are recognizing, because they're driven to use the technology, the advantage of the technology, many things are going to be possible that were impossible previously. And the focus on connectivity and broadband and all of those things that are not, or thought not to be important, are being reinvented in people's minds because they're forced to face them because they have to deal with them. I think that's a good thing.
Some very interesting, enlightening. I know and am very an avid fan of digital equity, and I really honestly didn't think about that in the context of the declaration and making place, but now I don't think we can do it without addressing it. Thank you so much, Bree. You really taught me something.
Awesome.
Oh, of course, Scott. Of course. We're just all blessed to be here together.
So one of the reasons that Tara, my Indigenous friend, can't be with us tonight is because she doesn't have an appropriate digital connection, but she's forced to homeschool her kids, and it's a disastrous situation when they hand you a laptop and say good luck.
Can I mention a couple things that I just came to mind really quickly too, is this, which is another sort of outcome, I think, of COVID and quarantine and the digital, but also the appreciation of place, is that I think if we also look at this digital connection with placemaking, one exciting thing that I've been thinking of, for example, in terms of like walking towards is, and goes to the equity aspect, is that if you look at what people are doing in digital humanities and critical race scholars, they're allowing people to do sort of like virtual tours where you can get access to all these historical information and the data, and they're making it accessible in a way that you can understand this place where you live. You can understand some of these histories, see archival photos, get the data on inequity, and get it easier. So there's that interesting aspect of what's happening, and what I think is gonna, if we do have more of this sort of online education online and what educators are thinking of, that's an interesting thing connected to places and placemaking, and having much easier access to that, in the sense that it's not just for academics. It's being made easier for folks to access and understand it. Number two, though, is that I think that because I have my students at FIU doing journaling about what they're doing with COVID. And this is talking about being aware of place, like this heightened sensitivity, because they don't have all this social contact. So even like in their own backyards or walking down the street, talking about how all of a sudden they're noticing they're feeling more present, and they're having almost this different kind of relationship to place at the same time that people are doing all this stuff digitally. So I think there's an interesting dynamic there too. I just think it's something we might want to just think about
Yeah.
in terms of outcomes of what happens after, hopefully we get beyond this.
So not to impinge, Corinna, but in an act, at least intentionally, of being inclusive, certainly that group of students could have a board the way that we just described with Monica. If they wanted to, I'm not asking you to do that. I'm teaching a bunch of engineering students right now, and that's a whole different challenge because I'm not an engineer. But anybody that a group of students who are grounded in community would be a wonderful resource. And I want to think about ways that we can open up sessions to allow our community to speak up about this. We're not ending today, we're just beginning.
I just wanted to highlight, I've been playing around in the mural, I think in the wrong area, but putting some Post-it notes up as you guys have spoken. And I hear some of the things you say sound really like declaration language. Like, I really loved what Corinna said, place isn't neutral. I think that's a really amazing shot across the bow kind of statement, that there's not an ability to take a passive approach to this. We have to be very declarative and actually design that space. And then Corinna, you also said our place awareness and appreciation are important. That's something I heard in this last statement you made. And place information and data should be liberalized and put online and made accessible and navigable in many ways. And then I heard you say, all communities should be able to determine what our tomorrow looks like. And many more things too. I got a little lost here, but really amazing stuff you guys are saying.
That's a ticket, Ryan.
Those are great stickies, Ryan.
I just put them in the wrong place, I think.
Thank you, Ryan.
Hey, Ryan. I made a comment in the video near the end that I would respectfully request be put up there, and it said, what I said was, if you start with an equitable process, the likelihood of an equitable outcome is vastly improved. And I didn't particularly say that as well as I did in the video, but you get the drift. And this focus on process has always been a mantra for me, that we often say that we don't even worry about the outcomes. We just stay focused on process, and the outcomes that we get are better than anything we could ever imagine. So I do believe if we focus on equity in the process, it's far more likely we will get an equitable outcome.
You're here.
Awesome. I brought him over here, Ryan.
Okay, I'm going to try on this one to scoot it over. Thank you.
That was my 2 cents.
Sound like $1 million to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you want to go over that?
Before we get off on a tangent here, we want to talk just for a moment about this NSF grant, that civic innovation. I think everybody should click on that at some point in the future and just take a look at it.
Sure.
Because it goes in alignment with what we're doing. And maybe it's being driven by that understanding, but it looks like it's looking for it as opposed to knowing about it. So I think we should look at
Homeland Security. I'm not giving them my number. No. Only joking. One of you guys can apply, but I don't think it'd be a good idea for me. No, I'm teasing. I will take a look at this tonight, tomorrow. I have time on my hands, and I have a 501c3, and if it looks like something big or small capacity, I have partners. Let's take a look. Now that we're into this, but right now the other beautiful thing is that we're doing lighter, quicker, cheaper work, and using a series of Zoom meetings or calls or what have you, and the vision board and then setting an intention to have a wrap-up time. I'll sit down and craft a little schedule. Maybe you want to get on a one-to-one with you, Monica, if you could give me a few minutes of counsel in the next day or two, just to help kind of draft and craft it through your perspective so we honor your process. But I'd like to suggest we could continue in those styles that we've discussed and see where the process takes us. I think it's I see already that there's a very, very big opportunity here. And I'm so impressed with the comments each of you have made. It's really exciting.
Wow. Well, we'll make ourselves available for this.
Thank you.
Well, cool. I think it maybe we'll get some of those our international regional partners on the line here in the near future and have a confab. But first, we want to listen to our peeps here and start to get a decent grassroots representation. I think that's key to the story that we're going to tell as we complete the tool. Does everybody agree with that premise?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're just here to help kick you off and provide any technical assistance your team needs. And we really want it to be driven by the participants you've selected and the communities that they can reach out to.
Yes, and so also I'll say, as we kind of, I think, are nearing the end of the journey tonight, yes, if you can share the video, there are several interested parties in South Florida that would like to see it. I don't have any problem with it being shared by anyone anywhere. This is all open source, nothing to hide. I don't, and so that's something I did also want to say, Ryan and Monica and all.
Okay.
Does anybody have? I think we should probably start to get to wrap up comments if that's okay with you, Monica, unless we've missed something else. But does anybody have some final comments they want to lend? No?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I have one, and so I'm going to screen share again if you'll let me. Yesterday I was on a wonderful chat with some of my fellows from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and they shared something very inspirational that I can't share with you right now. If Monica, can you?
Oh, I see.
Oh, is it you, Ryan?
No, you can't have multiple people share. So I stopped Monica's.
Correct. That's what I was asking. If I could, just for a moment, please.
You're slick. You're a little too slick for me.
So again, let me go to view here. Wait. Start. No, sorry. Hold on. All right. So that, doggone it. What? I'm not real good at this. One more second here.
No worries.
That's the one. So,
yeah.
Okay, I'll read it but this was from Kitty O'Mara. Oprah calls her the poet laureate of COVID-19. And the people stayed home and read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played games and learned new ways of being and were still and listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced, some met their shadows, and the people began to think differently. And the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses and made new choices and dreamed new images and created new ways to live and heal the earth fully as they had been healed.
They're here.
That's beautiful.
I
Thank
love
you for
that.
sharing
I
that.
love that. I put that on my Facebook already. I love that.
Yeah, well, and you know, I put it on, you know what? I put it on our next door community blog and I got attacked by some ruthless neighbors. Unbelievable. It really caused me a lot of anxiety today until I just decided that social distancing also applies to the Civic Association. I'm the president. And it's in perpetuity.
Oh, yeah.
We're not talking 2 months anymore, baby. We're talking a lifetime of this stuff. So I will recommend that social distancing is a very valid tool that we should all take with us for the rest of our lives. If a situation is toxic in any way, shape, or form, get yourself 10, 20, 30 feet away. That's what I have to leave you with, my friends.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Wonderful.